I was asked before the service started, did you hide the ladder? Daniel's preaching. So I did, in fact, hide the ladder. All joking aside, I appreciate so much. You know, those of us that have been doing this church thing and walking with the Lord for a long time, we kind of get into our ruts and we do things a certain way. And it's refreshing to see the next generation do things a little differently, with a new energy, with the same love. John tells us in 3 John, when he was writing to Gaius, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in the truth. Many of you know we've been blessed with 10 children. I have never, Linda, nor I have ever in any way put any pressure on our kids to go into the ministry. That's not ours to do. But we have, to the best of our ability, encouraged our kids to walk in the truth. Just walk with the Lord and you see where he leads you. And I'm grateful that God has led Daniel and given him a heart for ministry. And it's a great joy and honor to cautiously turn the service over to Daniel.
Someone else brought a ladder today. Nice try hiding it. No. A friend of mine, Mike, where are you, Mike? You're somewhere. Here he is. He told me he was going to bring a ladder. I told him I probably shouldn't. I feel like I brought y'all's expectations up a little too high. Let's bring it back down to ground level. So today, the title, I got to grab my clicker. You know, my family always calls them clickers. I know they're remotes, but they make a clicking sound, so we'll call it that. Today's title is in Hebrew. The first word is a sacred name for God. Now, the problem with this name is that it has no vowels, and one of the letters in it is a vav, which can be a V, an O, or U. So I have no idea how to pronounce it. And most people, they pronounce it differently, and then it's the sacred name for God, so it's kind of questionable if you should even say the word. So if it's questionable if I should even say the word, and I don't even know how to say the word, I might as well not even try. The second word, however, is koach, and it is the Hebrew word for power. So the title is God's Power. All right, awesome. Many of you guys know the story of Daniel. Daniel's a pretty awesome dude. I mean, check out his name. You can only expect cool things from someone with that kind of a name. But if you know the story of Daniel, you'll know Daniel had 3 friends. Whenever Daniel was taken into captivity, his friends went along with him. They didn't come along for the ride. They were in captive too. They're not very prominent through the ending part of Daniel, but near the beginning you'll see them throughout. Daniel and his friends, Nebuchadnezzar the king, had a dream. In this dream, I won't tell you the dream yet. The king couldn't remember his dream, so he came to his wise men and said, "Hey, tell me the interpretation." The wise men are like, "Okay, I need water. Tell us your dream." And he's like, "Oh, I don't remember. Like, what are you expecting from us?" He's like, "I'm expecting you all to die now." So the king was going to put all the wise men to death because they couldn't interpret his dream or tell him what his dream was. So Daniel, who happens to be a wise man, gets news of this and is like, "Hey, I don't want to die today." So he goes to the king and says, "Hey, let me and my buddies, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah, give us time to pray, and we'll get back to you, and God will tell us the interpretation." So Nebuchadnezzar's like, "Okay, we can do that." So Daniel goes back to his 3 friends, Azariah, Mishael, and Hananiah, and they pray about it. God reveals the dream. Daniel comes back to King Nebuchadnezzar and says, "Hey, you had a dream about a giant statue. This statue had a head of gold, had arms and shoulders of silver, had an abdomen of bronze, and had legs of iron and feet of iron and clay." Okay? Then he tells him the interpretation. Each of the different elements represent a different empire that will rule most of the known world at that time. He tells King Nebuchadnezzar, "Your kingdom, your empire is the golden head." Now this might be coincidental, but King Nebuchadnezzar, the very next chapter, builds a giant statue out of gold. So again, it could be coincidental, but I'm pretty sure the interpretation just got to his head. So not only does he build a giant statue of gold, but he makes this decree saying, when the music starts playing, everyone must worship this idol, this giant statue of gold. And those who don't will be thrown into a fiery furnace and burnt alive. Okay? This is very conflicting with Daniel Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael's belief. You may also know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's their Babylonian names. But this is confrontational with their beliefs because they're Jewish, and they follow God. And God said, "Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness thereof, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down nor serve them." That's I think it's the first of the 10 Commandments. So the music starts playing. Everyone starts bowing, except for Daniel's 3 friends. Now, I don't know where Daniel was. I've heard different interpretations. Maybe he was gone on business. Maybe he was right beside the king, but since he interpreted the dream, maybe they were better friends, and the king just pardoned him. For all I know, he was sleeping at the time. The Bible doesn't say where Daniel was, but all we know is that his 3 friends did not bow. Okay. The king hears about this, tells them to be brought to him, and when they're brought to him, he says, "Did you not hear the music? Did you not know you were supposed to bow? Don't you know I have the power to kill you? What God will save you from me?" This guy's got an ego. But I love their response. I have to turn around because of my bad eyesight. In Daniel 3:17, "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hands, O king." What a confident statement. I don't know everyone in this room. I know you guys pretty well, but I don't know that anyone in this room, myself included, would have this kind of confidence in God if put in the same situation that they were in. But let me tell you something. Anyone can have this kind of confidence in God. How? By understanding the different powers of God. You know, my family, we're all skinny, and that's great. It's a blessing. But because we're skinny, the only way to look normal is we have to work out. So we have to get bigger in order just to look normal, or else we just look tall and stretched out. So we're oftentimes, people in my family, people don't know that we're strong, so they don't think to ask us to do things that would require someone who's strong. It's not that we can't do it, it's just that they don't know to ask, which is great because I'm super lazy, and I don't want to do it. But God's the same way, not that he's lazy, but that oftentimes we don't think to ask God to do things because we don't understand that he can do them. We don't know what God's capable of doing, so we don't ask. Our confidence is in him because we don't know what he can do. Okay? Today we're going to talk about the different powers of God. That way we can kind of build our confidence. What can God do so that we can know what we can ask of God? All right, God has power over his creation. I actually had a bunch of slides, but I had to take them all out because I was afraid it was going to be too long. So it may still be too long, but just remember it could have been longer. If you're looking for God's power over his creation, you really don't have to look too much farther than the plagues of Egypt. So the very first plague, he turned the water from the Nile River into blood, okay, revealing that God has power to change his creation. Pretty big deal. We also see he sends swarms of frogs as well as locusts. So we see that God has power over his creation, over the living creatures. Again, a big deal. He's able to kill the cattle of the Egyptians, but he spares the cattle of the Hebrews, revealing that God has power over which of his creation lives and which of his creation dies. Again, a big deal. We also see that can also be seen in the last plague, where the Egyptians' firstborn died, but the Hebrews did not. God sent fire raining down from heaven. I don't know exactly what that was like because I wasn't there, so I can't say definitively. But I'm assuming they're meteorites. That sounds like it could be a possibility, very much a possibility. If that's true, then it reveals that God's power extends farther than just Earth to the rest of the universe, in which he's able to direct meteors in a way in which they hit an exact location, plaguing the Egyptians, but not the Hebrews who lived in the same place. So pretty intense stuff on what God's power is about. So we see God's power over his creation is basically limitless. There's almost no limit to what God can do. God has power over time and space. I told you earlier the sacred name for God, I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean, I could guess, but the only one who could probably correct me would be Mike and his wife, so either way. But if you look up the definition, it means self-existent or eternal. This also coincides with Exodus 3:14. When God was sending Moses, he said to him, Moses said to God, "Who am I supposed to say sent me?" He said, I am that I am. In other words, I am self-existent one. Michael, can you grab the thing? Go ahead and set it up on the stage. Appreciate it, bro. Now, what does it mean to be self-existent? What does it mean to be eternal? Well, let's give myself, for example. I am not self-existent. I am not eternal. Okay? Why am I not self-existent? Why am I not eternal? Love God. That's a good saying. I forgot to erase that. But you guys get a little extra with a little extra today. Yeah, I'll help you. And then go ahead and grab the marker and stuff. I didn't bring a ladder, but I still wanted a visual, so you're welcome. Today, Junior. Okay. Thanks. Oh, wow. That's some firm marker we got there. That's not going away. All right. So I'm not self-existent. What does it mean to be self-existent? It means I wasn't created, but I was created. So I have a time where I was born, 96. I don't know why I made that a G. 96. So I was born in 1996. And then I have an end. So eventually I'm going to die. Let's give me some years. So we'll go 2046. Yeah, I'm going to live to 50. Let's hope for that. Yeah, let's go 96. I like that idea. They do say we're living longer. But the thing with God is God has no beginning. And God has no end. He's infinity. So what does that mean? God was never created. God is self-existent. If he was never created, then he has no beginning. If he's eternal, he has no end. I did? I don't know how I did that. Oh. Who knows? I can just holler at you guys. Is it back on? Sweet. I don't like to yell. I'm very non-confrontational. So, to say that God has always existed is something that's very hard for us to grasp, okay? However, it's not a ridiculous statement. Every belief, whether you're theist, deist, or atheist, has to, if they're going back far enough, they have to say something has always existed, okay? I heard someone once say, he was an atheist, but he wasn't a Christian either. He said, maybe aliens made the universe. I said, okay, well, that would make them gods, but who made the aliens? Well, maybe aliens before them made them. Okay, who made them? Eventually, you have to go back to where something always existed. Something must have always existed in order to create something to exist. It's not possible for something to exist unless it was caused to exist. In that case, something had to have existed before it. How can you exist before the beginning unless you already existed, unless you always existed? So it's not a ridiculous statement to say that God always existed.
A first cause.
A first cause, exactly. Let me think. I've heard atheists say every element in the universe, all the atoms have always existed. And it's kind of hard because then they put dates on something, and how do you put a date on something that's always existed? Which is kind of the point we're going to. All right, God has always existed, and he will always exist. So what does that mean for time? What does that mean for us? How is that a power of God? How does this help us become more confident in God? David, I was born in 96. What's 3 years before I was born? 93. That IMP math is working. So we can go minus 3 years from when I was born. Okay, say I die in 2046. What's 3 years after I die? The rapture. The rapture. 2049. I guess you guys can already know that. Okay, you see, I can add time to my life because I have an end. I can take away time from my life because I have a beginning. But what's minus 3 from infinity? What's minus 3 from something that's always existed? Has no beginning. Infinity. See, you can't take time away from something that's always existed. It has to have a beginning for you to take time away from it. Okay? What's 3 years after God? Infinity. You can't add time to God because God has no end. If God has no end, you have to have an end to add on to. So if God has no beginning and God has no end, you can't add time, you can't take away time. This makes God timeless. Can everyone see my drawing? I know it's beautiful. You guys are like, you're like the next Da Vinci. So if God is timeless, what does that mean for us? It means nothing is ever taking up my God's time. God exists in time a little different than we do. Our future, He is there. That's His present. Our past, He is there. That's His present, while at the same time the future is His present. Our present, He is there. That is His present, while at the same time our past is His present, while at the same time our future is His present. He sees all of time. Oh, I guess I can draw again. Just like you can see this infinity. Oh, wow. Just as you can see this infinity symbol, God can see all of time at one time. He exists throughout it all at the same time. So this means my God is never too busy, okay? Who here knows the story of Elijah and the contest with the prophets of Baal? Go ahead and raise your hand. Yeah, it's a cool story. I love the story because Elijah does exactly what I would have done, start cracking jokes in the middle of it. Trash talking. So Elijah, he gives a contest. He says, okay, you children of Israel, you don't know who to serve. Let's have a contest to prove whose God is real. So he says, they set up this contest in which whichever God responds is the God the children of Israel are going to serve. So the prophets of Baal, they get to go first. And they're wailing, trying to get their God's attention. They're pulling their hair out, probably crying, I don't know. But then Elijah starts cracking jokes at them. Like maybe they're sleeping. Maybe they're too busy doing some other things. I can only imagine how embarrassing this was for the prophets of Baal. But I looked it up, and it turns out that was actual mythology in which they thought their gods slept. They thought their gods could be busy doing something else. But let me tell you something about my God. My God's never busy. My God exists throughout all of time. Nothing is taking up His time. So you might be thinking, well, I would have prayed today, but there's 6 billion other people in the world. God can help them. He's too busy with them. Nothing is taking up my God's time. My God is always available to help. He's never too busy to hear your prayers. Let's keep going. God has power over distance. If I was to tell you an Old Testament story in which God did something miraculous, you guys would just basically say, well, God was there when He did it, which is true, omnipresence. So we're going to talk a little bit about Jesus, which you can see definitively where He was at the time. So we know Jesus did a lot of miraculous things. This is when you take a drink to remember what you're going to say. That's right. I can't keep giving away trade secrets. So Jesus, we know He healed several different people, and many of you guys may know this, but He actually healed from a distance on many times. The first time in the book of John, it wasn't the first time it's mentioned, but in the book of John at least, a nobleman comes to Jesus and says, my son is sick. Can you please come and heal him? And Jesus said, go your way. Your son's already healed. So the man goes back home, finds out his son's been healed. Okay? Jesus never went to the nobleman's house. Jesus just spoke the words, and the nobleman's son was healed. This can also be seen, the Roman centurion. Many of you guys probably know the story of the Roman centurion. The Roman centurion came to Jesus. He wasn't Jewish, that's why I said the Roman. But he comes to Jesus and says, hey, my servant is sick. Can you heal him? And Jesus says, okay, take me to him. And the centurion's like, no. I'm not worthy for you to even come into my house. Just speak the words, and my servant can be healed. This centurion had more confidence in Jesus than the nobleman did. And he wasn't even Jewish. Jesus told him his son was healed. Oh, not his son, his servant. The centurion went home, and his servant was healed. So we see that there's no distance too far where my God cannot help. Okay? There's no time where He's too busy. There's no distance too far where He can't help. God has power over circumstances. This is the part where I really want to hit home with you. Let's see what time. We're doing okay. I don't really have enough time to finish it, but we're going to do it. God has power over circumstances. I love this subject. Deontology versus consequentialism. A consequentialist would say they're more goal-oriented. They're the people who say the end justifies the means. We don't care what you did to get to the end as long as the end is better than the means. Okay? So deontologists are very duty-oriented. They're more like, it doesn't matter what the end is like, you're supposed to do the right thing no matter what. So they're right and wrong. Deontologists or consequentialists are like, it depends. So their ideology is you can make the means right by the ends. They would use the argument of a birthday party. Samuel and I say he had a birthday, and I said, let's go get some shoes at the mall. But really, I was taking him to a surprise birthday party. Consequentialists would say, you lied, that was wrong. However, you were doing it for the right reasons, and more good came out of it, therefore you're justified. So they say lying isn't wrong in that case. But let's take it a step further. Say my family was abducted. Okay, I have a huge family. So I have 8 siblings, a nephew and a niece, and 2 parents. So that's 12. And then I have a sister-in-law, Ella. And then I have, 2 of my siblings are engaged. So it depends on when they abduct. It kind of depends on if there's 13 or if there's 15 in my family at the time. So say they abduct at 15, and they come to me and they say, hey, I want $10,000 for each of them or else I'll kill them. Well, I love my family, and each of them are worth more than $10,000 to me, but I just ain't got that kind of moolah, you know what I'm saying? So I go rob a bank. I pay off the abductors, my family's saved. Consequentialists would say, yeah, you robbed a bank, that was wrong. However, you saved 15 lives. You're justified in what you did. But what if I robbed the bank and they still killed my family? Well, then the ends no longer justify the means because the end was wrong and the means were wrong. So they were both wrong, nothing justified anything. Let's take it a step further. Say a terrorist, for whatever reason, they call the White House, they call the government. And when they call them, they say, hey, I have a nuclear bomb in a highly populated city, I'm going to blow it up. So they find their suspect, they torture their suspect, he won't talk. So then they take his family, torture his family, he still won't talk. So then they start killing off his family until the last child, he finally says where the bomb is, they disarm it, millions of lives are saved, okay? Consequentialists will say, yeah, it was wrong to torture him and his family and even kill them, but you saved millions of lives. Therefore, you're justified in what you did. But what if he never told them? Then they would have done the wrong thing for the right reasons, but then the wrong results would have happened. What if they got the wrong guy? So then they would have been torturing an innocent person and his family and killing them, and millions still would have died. See, the problem with consequentialism is it banks off of the idea that we control the future, that we are in control of the end. If that's true, then there's a point to it. But we're not in control of the end, are we? We don't control the future. Who controls the future? God controls the future. So a deontologist, not every Christian is a deontologist, and not every deontologist is a Christian. But a Christian deontologist says, hey, we have free will. We have control, somewhat control, over the means. However, God has control over the end. Therefore, we should do what is right with what we have control over and trust that God can make it right in the end. Okay? Again, it's kind of debatable. I'm somewhat of a consequentialist. When I'm watching movies, I'm like, beat them up, find out where the bomb is. But when it comes to real life, it seems as though the Bible is more deontological. We're going to talk about some deontological people, characters in the Bible. Daniel, again, a cool guy, cool name, super cool dude. It was a similar circumstance as his 3 buddies. The king made a decree. This time it was a different king, King Darius, I believe. He made a decree saying, no one can worship their God, no one can pray to their God for 30 days, okay? You can come to me if you have a request. Well, this is kind of conflicting with Daniel, because Daniel prays every day, and he thinks it's right to pray every day, which it is right to pray every day. A consequentialist would tell Daniel, you know what, it's only 30 days. You're going to do no good in this world if you're dead. You might as well just wait the 30 days out and live to serve another day. You can do more good in this world if you're alive than if you're dead. So a consequentialist would say, if you wait it out, you're justified. But Daniel's not a consequentialist. He's a deontologist. Not only does Daniel pray, he prays in front of a window. Okay, I don't know about you, but I would have, if I was going to do the right thing, I'd do it in a closet or something, somewhere where no one's going to catch me. But Daniel wasn't ashamed of doing the right thing. He prayed in front of a window, and he did get caught, and he got promoted. No, that didn't happen. The worst thing that could have happened to Daniel happened. He was thrown into the lion's den. Darius didn't pardon him. Daniel had to go through the punishment for doing the right thing. Now, Daniel wasn't in control of the end. King Darius, wasn't in control of the end either. God was in control of the end. God sent an angel to keep the lions from killing Daniel. Then, when Daniel finally got out the next day, because King Darius and him seemed to be buddies, he came to him and said, "Did your God save you?" Daniel's like, "Yeah, man. My God can do whatever he wants." So the king lets him out, and then Daniel, he continues to prosper in the king's reign, as well as the king makes a decree saying everyone needs to fear Daniel's God, the God who can spare him from the lion's den. So in the end, more good came out of it because he did the right thing. Why did more good come out of it? Because God is in control, not Daniel, not Darius. Let's keep going. Joseph. Joseph's a cool story, also a cool name, happens to be my first name, so you can only expect good things from this guy too. Now, I don't know much about Potiphar. We know he was an influential person. He had authority. We know he was no peasant. He had wealth. So I'm assuming he had the ability to pick his wife. And I don't know much about his wife, but I'm assuming he didn't pick her for her personality. Okay? Anyone who knows the story knows she wasn't the greatest woman in the world. But either way, I'm assuming she was a beautiful and seductive woman that caught the heart of Potiphar. And when Potiphar left, she came to Joseph and was like, "Hey, my husband's gone. Come have sex with me." Now, a consequentialist might say, "You know what, Joseph? Who knows? She might accuse you and throw you in prison if you don't." A consequentialist would say, "No one's going to know. It's not hurting anyone. Go ahead and do it, and you can do more good in Potiphar's home than you could in prison." So they would say, you're justified in doing the wrong thing for the right reason so that you can bring more right into the world. But Joseph isn't a consequentialist. He's a deontologist. Joseph tells Potiphar's wife that it would be wrong for him to do it, and then he flees from her. Guess what? Joseph gets a promotion. Wait, no, that didn't happen either. He was thrown in prison. He was accused and then thrown in prison. Now, things look pretty grim for him. The worst thing that could have happened would he be thrown in prison. That happened. But that's not the end of the story, because Potiphar's not in control of the end, Joseph's not in control of the end, and Potiphar's wife definitely isn't in control of the end. God is in control of the end. Joseph does get promoted after he's thrown into prison. He eventually comes out of prison. He becomes second in command of all of Egypt, the greatest nation on the earth at that time, in which all the other nations in the world came to them during a famine which Joseph predicted because of God, and all the nations of the earth were blessed because Joseph did the right thing. If Joseph hadn't done the right thing, he probably would have stayed in Potiphar's home for the rest of his life and had this bad conscience, or even put to death, I don't know. Crazy things could have happened if Joseph did the wrong thing. But because he did the right thing, God was in control of the end, and God blessed him for it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, also known as Mishael, Hananiah, and Azariah. These were the three friends of Daniel. I already gave you kind of a backstory of what happened. The king said unto them, "And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands?" And this is the most deontological statement I've ever heard. And they responded, "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace." Why? Because God's in control of the end. "And he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up." This is beautiful, guys. I don't want you guys to go home and be like, "I'm going to do the right thing no matter what, and good things are going to happen to me." No. Good things aren't necessarily going to happen to you. Sometimes God allows you to go through suffering. I mean, my goodness, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Joseph was thrown into prison. Bad things happened to them right after they did the right thing. So just because you do the right thing doesn't mean everything in this world is going to go well for you, okay? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they understood this. They said, God can save us. But even if he doesn't, let it be known we will not do the wrong thing. Okay, most deontological statement I've ever heard in Scripture. There's probably others, but that's my favorite, okay? Good, yeah, because it's in Daniel, exactly, my name. I really relate to this story. Guess what happens? They're promoted. No. They're thrown into a fiery furnace. This fiery furnace was so hot, those who pushed them into the fiery furnace burnt alive. They died. Saying burnt alive, you could just burn your finger. They died from the fire. They weren't even in the fire. It was just so hot that they were affected by it and they died. After they're thrown in the fire, King Nebuchadnezzar looks into the flames and says, "Didn't we throw 3 in there? Why do I see 4? And why does the 4th one look like the Son of God?" All right, this is what is believed to be Jesus. Now again, Jesus is God. We can talk about the Trinity, but we ain't got time for that. Jesus, like God, has always existed because he is God. So Jesus didn't just begin to exist when he was born by the Virgin Mary. No, he existed in the past too. He's always existed. You can see him several times in Scripture. He came, talked to Joshua, talked to Abraham. In this case, he showed up in the fire. Nebuchadnezzar brings them out. The 4th person, I guess, went missing. I don't know. But it only talks about the 3. He brings them out, and he promotes them. Who saw that coming? Even though I said it earlier. But it took a while. Nebuchadnezzar was not in control of the end. God was in control of the end. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego weren't in control of the end. They were in control of the means. And they decided what they had control over, they were going to do the right thing and trust that God could make it right. And even if he didn't make it right, they were still going to do the right thing no matter what. They were eventually promoted, and so the right thing happened to them in the end. Anyone can have this kind of confidence in God by understanding the powers of God. My God has the power over creation, all of creation. My God has the power over time and space. There's no time where my God is too busy. There's no distance too far where my God can't help. And God has power over the circumstances. God is always in control of the end. Good things might not happen to you just because you do the right thing. But we're not in control of that, and thank God we're not in control of that. Will you do what is right and trust God? Now let's give some examples here. For example, what if you're married? I have a very broad audience here, so there's young people, there's married people, there's older people, there's experienced people, not old people, experienced people. Yeah, you're welcome. I said young people over here. So I'm going to try and hit some different areas. What if you're married and you did something wrong and you won't tell your spouse? And whenever the topic is brought up, you keep lying about it. Because you're afraid if your spouse ever knew, it would ruin your marriage. And maybe you have kids. You're like, if it ruins our marriage, it'll ruin my kids' lives. I'm doing more right by doing wrong by lying to her. I would be doing more wrong by telling her the truth. But that's not your decision. Or it's your decision whether you do the right thing or not. But it's not your decision on whether it's right in the end. God is in control of the end. You do need to be doing the right thing no matter what and trust that God can make it right. I don't know how God would make that situation right, but you know what? Thank God I'm not him, because if I was in control of the end, I'd be totally confused on how to make that thing right. But God knows how to make it right. No one would have predicted that God would have sent an angel for Daniel. No one would have predicted that someone thrown in prison would have one day become second command of all of Egypt. No one would have predicted that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have come out of the fires, not even their clothes being burnt. I'm pretty sure it said they didn't even smell like smoke. That's an interesting detail. I don't know that it was necessary, but if God put it in there, it must have been. No one would have predicted that. And thank God that he's in control. Maybe it's a test. We have young people here, even college people in the back. And Weston. Don't want to leave you out there, bud. And Samuel. And anyone else in college that I forgot to mention? Back there. If you cheat on a test, you might say, no one's being hurt by it. What wrong is it going to do? But if you were to tell the truth, the consequences can be grave, especially if you're in college. You can get expelled for it. And if you're expelled in college, what other college is going to accept you after they find out you were expelled for cheating? You know what? We're not in control of the end. We need to do the right thing and trust that God can make it right. Again, I don't know how God would make that right, and that's good why I'm not God. But we need to be doing the right thing no matter what. What if you're at work? A lot of times, you may not have been necessarily the one who did the wrong thing, but what if you saw someone do the wrong thing and you're afraid to tell the boss? Because you're afraid, well, people will call me a tattletale, snitches get stitches, that kind of stuff. You might say, it wasn't really hurting anyone. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, and if my boss asks, I'll just lie about it. It's not your decision to make it right. Your decision is to do the right thing and trust God. Will you trust God today? Let's go ahead and pray. Dear Lord, I want to thank you for this day. Thank you that we're able to be here, Lord. Thank you for the rain. I know we've been needing it. Lord, I know we don't always ask you for things. Oftentimes, we trust ourselves more than we trust you, or we trust money, or we trust friends, things that we think we have confidence in, Lord, because we don't understand what you're capable of doing. Lord, I pray that as we go throughout the rest of our lives, we would understand that you have power to do whatever you want, Lord, and you have power over the circumstances in our lives. Lord, give us this confidence in you so that we can know what we can ask, and we can know that we can do the right thing and you can make it right. But even if you don't make it right, Lord, please help us to do the right thing no matter what. Lord, you are glorious, and we know that in the end, for all the Christians, we will spend an eternity in heaven, and everything will be made right for us. Thank you, God. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.